Good morning, James. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to the Healthy, Peaceful podcast. And I want to start out with an introduction. James Sant is a vegan chef, an instructor, and a culinary artist. James is a lifelong professional artist, and he's been an advocate for fresh and wholesome foods for decades. After a serious industrial accident, James researched everything pertaining to the healing properties of living plant-based foods. And this led James to study at the Living Light Culinary Institute in Mendocino, California. And he later became the school's lead instructor and creative director. Two of his culinary passions are fermented foods and bread making, making exquisite breads from sprouted grains and seeds. James loves to experiment with a wide variety of krauts, pickles, fermented drinks, and condiments. He enjoys teaching and understanding of fine art and science of fermentation, and he considers fermented and cultured foods to be a vital part of a healthy living food lifestyle. Always a generous spirit, James will do anything to help people. He's a committed father of 2 adult children. He has facilitated men's retreats for many decades. He loves the pottery wheel, yoga studio, meditation, gardening, teaching plant-based raw food cuisine at events around the country. And he's also made healthy food for the masses at Burning Man. At the end, I will let you know where you can find Chef James Sant, both on Facebook and Instagram. And all of his information will also be included in the show notes. The title of today's interview, although I know we're going to go off from many variations of this theme, is Cultivating a Healthy Gut and Easy Ferments to Make at Home. Welcome, James. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, very fun. Good
Great.
to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start out with cultivating a healthy gut.
Okay.
And, we hear a lot about, especially now with COVID and the renewed attention to immunity, or it's on the forefront, immunity, and the importance of a healthy microbiome.
Yes.
Would you like to say, what would you like to offer regarding that? What are your thoughts?
Leads back to what got me into the exploration of plant foods and raw foods as they pertain to healing, if you want to go to the gut. Because what I realized when I had the serious neck injury and shoulder injury that I was trying to heal from, and trying to avoid surgery and medications and butt control inflammation and all these different things to facilitate healing my neck without fusion surgery, it led me to the pH balance in the body. And that was all new to me back then. I'd already been mostly vegan and vegetarian, or not vegan, but vegetarian for many, many years, since the early 80s at that point. And I would say pescatarian, because I grew up, fishing for salmon in Alaska, and that was a regular part of my diet also, was salmon. But
how many years ago was your industrial accident that you
started?
started?
About 10 years, 11 years ago now.
Okay.
Before I went to Living Light for training, back in Bend, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And I was led to the book, The pH Balance, and understanding that in the body. And I started understanding the difference in alkaline foods versus acidic foods and how they play out in your body. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I became very passionate about that, and I wanted to see if I could control the inflammation in my own body and get into the science of my own body in my own gut. And so I started testing myself with pH strips 3 times a day and tracking and seeing if I could. And what I realized was if I kept the cooked food in, I couldn't bring the pH to the level that I wanted, the 7.365, that is the point where the body will buck inflammation, where it can turn around cancer, where it can do all kinds of incredible healing things for us. Now, to maintain that 7.365 is very hard on the standard American diet. And I quickly realized that. And just my own trial and error through the pH strips led me eventually to do a pretty much 100% raw diet. Because once I dialed that in, I was there. And I didn't even know what raw food was at the time.
Okay.
I was totally oblivious to the raw food movement at that moment.
Right.
I was a very healthy eater, always very creative, very healthy, grew up in a bakery, loved to do, or with a father that was a baker, homemade breads, all kinds of stuff. But I'd had a lot of dairy in my diet and eggs. I was vegetarian. And I quickly learned that those would spike the acidity in my body. So I took them out.
Right. They're acid forming foods.
And healing that led me to understand the acidity of certain foods. And meat, dairy, and eggs just throw you off the chart. You can't hit that 7.365 very easily.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to be doing extreme measures like drinking a bunch of baking soda and water. But I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
pH. I wanted to do it naturally.
Sure.
And that led me into my entire training through the entire program at Living Light and other online programs in vegan nutrition and just chefing. And eventually David Perlmutter came out with the book, The Brain Maker.
Right, or
teaching.
Or first it was it Grain Brain?
Grain Brain was his first book.
Right, and now it's Brain Maker. Yeah.
And I don't have a gluten insensitivity, and I have Grain Brain, and I read it, but it didn't really set with me quite as much. And then he came out with Brain Maker, where he really figured out through his own practice, working with people that get dementia and Alzheimer's, because he's a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, he's
of fermentation on the body, and what led him to that was studying the microbiome and how in this day and age of processed foods, the commercialization of food led to us pretty much killing the food to make it safe. You know, we irradiate it, we cook it to death, we can it, we package it. It's dead.
Right.
It's a grocery store, and 80% of everything in the entire store is dead food.
Right. It's
processed.
It's not offering a lot of prana.
And that's leading your body to be very acidic, not in the pH balance that leads to a healthy life. And what it has done is rejected all of the tried and true ancient techniques that have been with humanity for a long time. I don't care what culture you're talking about around the world. Fermentation and putting food up, especially in the northern climates where we didn't have stuff growing year round, was very strong. And it kept them very healthy, especially in the wintertime where they didn't have fresh vegetables they're eating a lot. And the way they put them up was through lacto fermentation many times. And lacto fermentation creates probiotics that are really great for the gut.
Right. So yeah, that's important.
Bringing those back in became very important. And it was that's the curve that took me to the great understanding of fermentation. And I'd always loved fermentation. It was more like home brewing beer and making sauerkraut and just tickling around the edges of it. But then I really dove in strong the more I understood that it's not just one thing like sauerkraut in your diet. It's a plethora of different things. You want to have kombucha, you want to have kefir, you want to have kraut, and sourdough bread if you can do bread, and any kind of, even pickled blueberries.
It's beautiful.
You put into your shrub drinks. That's incredible. I mean, I will play around with fermentation on anything, just to give it a try and to keep a broad spectrum of different kinds of lactobacillus and different probiotics coming into my gut, because gut health leads to brain health. That's why it's called the Brain Maker.
Yeah, that's
it's just good for anyone to understand. And
that's really good. Yeah, you're gonna tell us about your favorite ferments, and there's a couple of questions I want to follow up with. The first one is, I know that David Perlmutter, Dr. David Perlmutter, that there were many videos that he put out during and on his Facebook page during COVID-19 related to the virus and immunity. Was there anything there that really spoke to you, or that you want to mention for our viewers and listeners?
He's very grounded, and he's very middle of the road, and he looks at the science, and he'll tell you what steps to take. Vitamin D, D3 with K2, and keeping ester C involved, and zinc, and different things that you can do to take care. And of course, a predominantly plant-based diet. He's not totally vegan, but he knows the power of plant foods, especially fresh food. And we have the luxury of being able to get it year round. Imagine back when they didn't. So his message is more just about taking control of your personal health and not getting into conspiracy stuff.
Right. We can easily get off on that.
Vaccination stuff and all that road that a lot of people are going down. And I appreciate well-rounded and grounded doctors that are out there keeping us informed during this, because there's a lot of hyperbole going on online, as I'm sure you're well aware.
Of course, no doubt. Thank you for that.
For some reason, people in the health food industry can fall prey to the conspiracies, which I've seen, believe me, in the communities that I hang out in.
Well, they're not the only ones. There's no doubt. They're not the only.
I'm happy to have those conversations with anyone, because I'll bring them right back to a grounded place, because science is great.
Yeah,
I'm a very spiritual person. I feel the energy in the food and in my kitchen, and I think it is what keeps me healthy and stuff. But it doesn't have to do with spirituality. It has to do with science.
Right.
Dance.
Yeah.
That is.
Well. Exactly. Well, there is definitely. Well, cooking, and just preparing beautiful food in general is definitely the intersection of art and science. There's no doubt.
Definitely.
I know that you talked about the importance of fermented foods in the microbiome, and specifically in, encouraging good health with the probiotic effect. Could you distinguish between prebiotics and probiotics? And
sure. Probiotics are delivered by the different fermented foods that we eat. And, some of them pass through your body or die off, or, they don't last forever. And that's why you replenish them to keep your gut microbiome really healthy. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands of microbiomes, and they're all doing their dance. And when they're doing it in a beautiful way, they're helping to stave off inflammation and different diseases and all kinds of great things for your gut. But the way that you can keep them flourishing and growing even more, more so than what you took in, and flourishing and expanding in your body, is including prebiotics in your body. And you can Google that and get a list of the different, like, sun chokes and different kind of things you may not have thought of. Jicama, there's different kind of root vegetables, especially, that feed the probiotics in your gut, if you include them in your diet. And if you can find ways to creatively weave them in, I will have this on my blog webpage that's being loaded up, because it's very important to understand. And I'm all about gut health. And if people look into the Brain Maker book from David Perlmutter, he very clearly lines out which of the prebiotics you should have in your diet. And it's not that you have to have them, but why not? Because they're going to expand the probiotics in your gut, make you that much more healthy.
So there's a synergistic relationship between the prebiotics and the probiotics.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And now I've noticed that people even have packaged prebiotics as well as probiotics, at the health food store that people are taking.
Right.
My path is not to turn to bottles of medicine. Yes, I will take supplements when necessary. I take B12. During this crisis, I'm taking my D vitamins and the K2 and the zinc and the vitamin C to keep myself a step above.
Sure.
But if there's a natural way to do it, that's where I'm going.
Right. You really.
Chef, I'm about doing plant food medicine to keep yourself.
Yeah. Right. You're an advocate of really the whole approach, the natural approach, when and if at all possible.
But there's options out there. Some people want to have a life where they have or don't have a life where they have the time to include healthy probiotics that they're making,
Right,
their own ferments, and so they're going to go out and buy some very expensive probiotics to supplement with.
right,
There's
right.
nothing wrong with that, but I think
Yeah.
that it's more bioavailable in your body and is going to flourish in your gut far better than any supplement you can take by including a wide range of wonderful ferments in your life.
Sure. And it's also going to taste a lot better.
Absolutely. And it's fun.
You know?
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is why not have fun in the kitchen?
Well, I think
Like when I was in college, you know, back we can grow up like most of us do, thinking of the kitchen as a chore.
yeah, true.
Oh, how much time is it going to take to make this meal and all this stuff? But if you can just click that mindset and say, this is my creative studio.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
You know, it's not just a place of chore; it's a place of studio. My kitchen is my sanctuary.
Sure.
You know, I have my
Yeah, let's see your. Oh, wow, look at that.
And to me, it's a sacred space.
Yes.
There's always good music when I'm in creative. I don't have the, God forbid, the news these days playing while I'm making.
Oh,
food.
yeah, exactly.
That you cultivate in the
Sure.
room and that you surround the food with is the energy you're eating.
Exactly.
Make
Well,
the kitchen a fun, explorative place, and ferments are really fun.
sure. Well, that's, you know, what you mentioned about the energy of your space, how the energy of the chef, you know, that's a very Eastern concept, you know, thinking about what we bring to the food and what we cultivate in the kitchen.
What we get from the food.
And what we get from the food. Exactly. So
Exactly.
You also mentioned that you like to use a variety of ferments because you feel that is bringing something to the microbiome than if you just, you stuck with your favorite sauerkraut. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, like this is many people probably know. I mean, this one has a lot of tape all over it. These are words that say love from students from around the world. And if they would visit
in different languages,
Finland or Africa or wherever, I would have them put a love note on my kombucha fermenting. This one makes the best kombucha of any jar I have.
Oh, that's
beautiful. You can see in there's the scobies.
Oh, the scobies, okay.
You know, and that's a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast.
Right.
That's the acronym.
Sure.
That is a completely different probiotic than when I'm going down to the farmer's market and getting some wonderful heirloom peppers, like I just did this week.
Sure.
And creating a lacto fermented pickled peppers, basically, but lacto fermented, not using vinegar.
Sure.
Where you're coaxing out with just a little bit of salt, the natural probiotics and things that will ferment and develop from different vegetables and fruits.
Yeah.
Very different probiotics coming into your gut, which are great. And like I said, a broad spectrum is what you want to have. And here's another one, water kefir crystals. A lot of people like to play around with those. I love these. In fact, I'm going to open that one today, and I'm very excited about it. Jackfruit with some lime zest in there.
Oh my goodness.
Water kefir crystal. I have bottles of it in my fridge right now. It's like the best tasting water kefir crystal I've ever tried. And school, we used to just get out wild, random things when we had a big batch of water kefir going and just play. And that one was our ultimate favorite.
Oh, I can imagine.
Lime together is
lime and mango is fantastic.
And lime and mango, it would also be great. And I know that combination.
Oh, you have lime and jackfruit.
Yeah, no, but papaya with lime on it knocks it out.
Sure. Yeah, any of those tropical fruits.
Lime on it improves, if you've ever noticed that. And so using that logic, we put lime zest in with the jackfruit in the water keepers, and it's just spectacular.
Oh, wow. Now, tell me about the water kefir, because you have me intrigued now. I know what kefir is, but I'm not familiar with water kefir.
That's a good thing to point out, because this is not dairy kefir.
Right.
Okay, that would be in a more acidic realm. But for people that do dairy, that's actually a better way to do it.
Sure.
If they're going to do, especially if it was goat or sheep milk kefir, which is more closely aligned with what human milk would be. If there's any animal mucus that you want to drink,
right.
would be the better one to do. I'd stay away from that. I've gone totally plant-based.
Sure.
And so I can't remember, maybe 5-6 years ago, I stumbled into people that were doing water kefir crystals. And at first I was like scratching my head going, what? Because I knew what kefir was.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I've done dairy kefir for years when I was a vegetarian. And this one perplexed me, but it is also a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, like a kombucha is.
Okay.
But they're these little cottage cheesy crystals that grow. And I've heard various theories about how it came about. I think someone told me that they took it from mushrooms originally somehow, the culture that got started. Whatever the case, you have to feed them. They take a little bit more care than scobies.
Okay.
I have a gigantic gallon jar of a SCOBY hotel of just layered scobies because I do so much kombucha and I love kombucha.
Right, right.
And I can leave that parked for 6-8 months and just say I'm on a kombucha break and then come back and the scobies are just fine. And
Okay.
Right
So they
so
don't require a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, this one I just got going on the 2nd. Today is the, what, 7th?
Today is the 7th, yeah.
Okay, so this I will be harvesting today. This is ready. I can see it's got bubbles going on there, and the kefir crystals are going up and down, doing their thing.
Sure.
This is ready to flavor and put into the clip jars, and then let it sit for 3 more days and build up some carbonation. Because right now it's breathable, so it's not going to really get too carbonated. You want to let the gases off during the first ferment, just like with kombucha. And I use a water lock top on my kombucha, so the flies can't get in.
Right.
I just didn't have a water lock one for this half-gallon jar.
Right. See.
If you don't, this is just a coffee filter.
Coffee or cheesecloth or something.
A paper towel or a tea towel, anything like that, so it can breathe.
Yeah.
But then if you want to get that really effervescent champagne-y carbonation that both of these will create, you're going to add in a little bit of fruit juice or raw fruit. In the case like jackfruit, I put a few, like 6 pieces of jackfruit in there and some lime zest, and then filled it up. Of course, filtered out the water kefir crystals.
Right, right.
When you're using those, you want to make sure, like on kombucha, not as big a deal, and I can filter with something like this. Is a stainless sieve. But when I'm using water kefir crystals are very sensitive. So this one is not metal.
Right.
This one is made from, a silicone plastic or something.
Okay.
That I'm pouring it through to get the water kefir crystals out. They don't react well with metal.
I see.
Stay away from metal and water kefir, and you'll keep your crystals way happier.
Okay.
Remove those crystals. The water goes in with whatever flavoring you want, and the sky's the limit. You can find many great books.
Okay. And so this is going to be a drink like kombucha?
Yeah, it's a wonderful. And the thing here's the big difference here.
Yeah.
Kombucha, you have to use tea. Okay.
Right.
It's synthesized for white, black, or green tea.
Right. So it's caffeinated.
Symbiotic dance with tea leaves.
Yeah.
And the tannins and the acids in the tea work with it to keep the SCOBY healthy and happy. But because of that, it has caffeine in it.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't want to have a drink, and it is a far less caffeine than tea or coffee.
Right.
Very, very minuscule amount in kombucha. So it's not. Yeah. But there are some people that don't want any caffeine in their diet.
Sure.
There's none of that in kefir.
Okay.
This doesn't use tea. This just uses sugar and water. And there's a conversion of the sugar as the symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. The scope, in this case, the water crystals go and eat that sugar up.
Right.
They're converting that sugar and creating the final end product filled with all the probiotics in it, which is really great for your gut.
Okay.
But it's really fun, but they are a little bit, you just, the minute that I'm finished sieving these out, I got to put them in a jar and put some sugar water in there and get my next batch going.
Yeah,
you can lose them. They can become unhealthy if they sit for weeks at a time. And someone's not babysitting your kefir babies. Right.
They require a little more care and attention than the kombucha.
Do. And then there are methods. Some people will dehydrate them and then rehydrate them later. If you were really going to be going for months and you had a whole bunch of them, you could try dehydrating them in your dehydrator on a real low temperature and then rehydrating them and reconstituting them later. I've never done that because it's easy to just order some new ones online. If I'm
that's right.
I'll try and I'll even refrigerate them to slow them down while I'm gone. And sometimes they come back fine, sometimes they don't. But they're not as resilient as kombucha.
As the SCOBY and the kombucha.
Yeah, the SCOBYs don't even like to be in the fridge. I never put them in the fridge. You just have them on a shelf in the SCOBY waiting to be reenacted and brought back to service. So.
The SCOBY hotel wing?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? That's great. That's great.
I always have, you know, because every batch makes a new baby. You know that if you've made kombucha.
Right.
You need SCOBY every time. So you can be giving them away to all your friends.
Yeah.
You can put them in your compost. They're filled with wonderful nutritional probiotics and stuff that will help your compost out. So you don't have to give them away, or you don't have to create a huge SCOBY hotel. But I tutor so many people that I'm constantly having students say, "Hey, how can I get a SCOBY baby?" And I've made these things all over the world. Yeah,
that's great. Well, I love the jar with the different languages on it. That's great. That's good energy there.
Good energy. I like putting good messages on ferments. Taking the time to do a huge batch of kraut or kimchi. I'm going to put love, appreciation, everything all over that jar just to make sure there's no molds or
it is. It does. Yeah.
And with the method I use, that never happens because I'm very clean in
I'm sure.
every ferment that I do.
But it's extra insurance, right? Yeah. Okay,
right.
That's great. That's great. Now, let's say, you have taught at Living Light and been the artistic director for many years, a creative director. Creative culinary director.
Creative and culinary programs director.
And the programs director, yeah.
Right.
But anyway, so you've been in front of students who, some are beginners, but many have a lot of knowledge in food and food preparation when they came to Living Light and enrolled in the programs there. And in case I didn't say it, I believe I said it, but Living Light was a raw food, plant-based culinary school in Mendocino, California, that area.
Actually, the first gourmet raw food program in the world.
Okay, I wasn't aware that it was the first gourmet raw. Right.
That whole thing, Sherry Soria.
It started by Sherry Soria, who
has
done wonderful work. But anyway, so students coming into a gourmet culinary school are going to be at a different level than someone who's, they really want to start fermenting, but they're very intimidated. And I'm sure you get this question a lot.
Yeah.
Or they don't think they have the time. Maybe they live a sort of they don't want one more thing on their plate to have to so there's a resistance, I think, and some people don't want. They're thinking about, I don't want all these jars or the SCOBY motel or so. How do you how do you address that? How do you encourage people to take that first step?
Well, first of all, intriguing them by their own senses.
Right.
By opening up a jar and saying, try this.
Yeah.
Compare that to the pickle you just bought at the store.
Sure.
I guarantee you, it brings tears to their eyes sometimes how delicious it is.
Oh, yeah.
Different.
Yeah.
It's like buying canned soup and making soup from scratch.
Oh, absolutely.
The difference in making your own ferment at home is amazing. And the creativity is endless. Endless. There's so many great blogs and ideas out there. And the truth, what I try and get across to people is, you can nerd out on it. My favorite book would be The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz, for sure.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of meeting Sandor Katz, and he gave us the idea of doing herbal beer back when I went to a tincture workshop with him in Bend, Oregon. His sister lives in Bend, Oregon. And so, at that time, I really didn't know who he was, or I really would have been like worshiping him at the
Yeah. Do you want to tell? I mean, just for our viewers, Sandor Katz has a number of books on fermentation.
Yeah, Wild Fermentation was his first one. There's this one. I love his little handy.
I think that's a great one.
That is for the beginner. This is so great and has everything you need to know to do simple fermenting. this is when you really want to nerd out on it. Look at the entire history of fermentation throughout the world and all the different techniques that are out there in every culture. And we're not talking just vegan ferment. We're talking any kind of ferment.
Sure, sure.
Whether it's meats or this is the history of it. Fantastic book.
Yeah.
But for quick fermenting, this is really a great one. And where I started to go with that is in pointing out this doesn't have to be rocket science. It's very
the title of that small book, James, is
Basic Fermentation.
Okay.
Sandor Katz.
Basic Fermentation by Sandor Katz. So that would be a good book for someone to start out with.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, and it keeps it simple. You know, just the simple understanding that in a typical lacto fermentation, it's about, if you look at the Noma guide, I also have that book here, to fermentation, generally it's going to be about 2 or 3% salt to the weight of the ferment. So you get out your little gram scale. This is how I do it.
So do you feel it's important to have this scale?
2 tablespoons of salt per this jar or that jar. I like to be precise.
Okay. So you like to use a scale?
I do, and I do about 2.5%. So you're gonna weigh it, zero it out. You're gonna zero out the weight of the jar first.
Right, right.
You can put in your liquid that you're gonna use to ferment with, and see how much that liquid weighs, and then multiply it by 0.025.
Right.
And it's not as much as you think. It's a very small amount of salt in there, and that's your perfect level for most things. I'm going to bump it up if I'm doing, like I did some heirloom blonde cucumbers and pickled them. And cucumbers, you want to take the salt a little higher because it keeps them crisp.
Okay.
And you'll notice if you're too low on the salinity in there, they're going to be really mushy.
They'll get a bit mushy. Okay.
I want them to be a little crisp and crunchier. And pickles, I'm going to take it up to 3%.
Okay.
It can be that easy, and then just sterility, making sure everything is clean.
Okay.
And I don't mean like as far as the vegetables go. I'm talking about the jars and your surface and your knife and everything that you're using. Just make sure you've cleaned it really well. You don't have to go use some sterilizer or bleach on it or anything like that. Hot water, soapy, rinse it really well, dry them off, have a very clean surface. And then on the vegetables, a very simple rinse. Is what you want. I don't want people scrubbing the crap out of things they're going to ferment. There's a lot of wild yeasts and a lot of wonderful things that naturally come on anything that you're going to ferment, and you don't want to scrub all that off.
So you just would you even scrub them with a Japanese vegetable brush, or even that would be too much?
Only if they were really dirty.
Okay, right.
Just using a warm water rinse and just really rinsing them well.
Sure.
And sometimes I'm peeling them anyway, but sometimes I'm not. Depends on,
right.
But good, clean methods in the kitchen will ensure that you don't get weird molds.
Yes.
That is keeping everything down in the brine while it's fermenting,
Yes. So immersed in the liquid.
Yeah. The rhyme that I've taught my students for years is if you're in the brine, you're fine.
Okay, if you're in the brine, you're fine. I like that.
Yep, and anything that's sticking up and out of there. These are heirloom grape tomatoes that are grown in the garden, and I have them in here with thyme and red onion.
Beautiful. One
of my favorite ferments to just plop on salads, to put in tacos.
And you take that. You also take the pungency out of the red onion.
Oh, it just becomes. It melts in your mouth. I love onions.
That is
when
beautiful.
I loaded them in here, I would take like a glass weight like this. If you don't have a glass weight, you can find other things that could work. Sometimes you can find even the lid of a smaller jar in plastic, not metal. And then just put it in there to hold things down and screw your lid on the top. I like these glass fermentation weights.
Okay.
Have to weigh a little ridge in them so you can pick them back up, but you just drop
them. So that goes right inside the jar?
Yep, and it holds all of those tomatoes, in this case, and onions down under the brine. Then I put on my fermentation. It doesn't have this lid on yet. That's what it was in the fridge with.
Yeah.
needs an airlock. So I love these, and you can find these online if you look. Any fermentation site is going to have them. They're not too expensive. Even once you have them, it's great. They let the gases out.
Okay, so that it's not airtight, is what you're saying. Right.
But also, flies can't get in. No molds can get in. It keeps it very clean while it's fermenting.
Right.
Another one is these little silicone ones that look like a little nipple, and they have a little hole in the top, little slit.
Okay.
They're really easy to use with your existing parts that you have for mason jars. You just put them in there and use that, and that's going to breathe. So these are two great options.
Okay.
I don't use these big airlock ones like on my kombucha for jars like this, because I need sometimes up on a cabinet where this is pretty lanky and this big thing on every jar. That's why I love these.
Yeah, those are great.
That come out that are just low profile, easy to watch. Now be aware that these will bubble over when you're fermenting.
Okay.
Sometimes if they're a real active one, it can come up and it'll spit out the top of your little ferment, either of these.
Mm-hmm.
So it's safer to have these on a cookie sheet, or in my case, I use a cafeteria tray.
Okay.
The ones that I grow my sprouts on. I'll put all the ferments that are going right now on that tray and put it on a shelf, so you don't get a mess on your shelf.
Yeah,
You'll be up there with a sponge cleaning up, and that will bring in a bunch of fruit flies.
Sure. Yeah. So
I definitely put something under it while it's fermenting.
Okay.
And when that's finished, these went for 7 days. It's pretty warm now. They might go longer in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
Then I take this one off, take the glass weight out, make sure everything's down in there, and just put a solid lid on. I actually like these ones Ball has come out with because they seal tight and they're not metal. I'm so tired of those metal ones.
Oh yeah,
lids, and the canning lids are an important part of the process if people are canning. I don't tend to do canning, and they rust. And
they do rust.
That, and they freak me out. And I don't want my ferments touching metal, rusty metal.
Yeah, that's great.
That are BPA safe and leak proof. They don't, you can lay them on their sides. They won't spill in the fridge. Really great. You'll see these wherever you can buy mason jars. Everyone's carrying them now because they become all the rage. The rust.
Are they Ball? Are they specifically for ferments, or they're just
Ball? And they are leak proof Ball lid. But there's other ones out on the market. This one I found. There's a company called iLids.
Okay.
ILIDS, and they have a little rubber gasket inside also BPA free, and they seal super tight. You can find those online if you I'm sure it's ilids.com.
Okay, so that's
different ones coming out with these. As people moved more into the fermentation market that wasn't about canning, that sector of the mason jar market said, we don't want these rusting metal things. So innovating and coming up with these lids, and these white ones you can find too. These leak more easily.
Okay.
They're inexpensive, these white plastic ones you can buy, but I'm always aware that if I'm going to lay these on their side, these blueberries are so good.
Oh my goodness, I'm envious of you there with fermented blueberries.
Shrubs I make with these.
These are
leaks. I don't lay them on their side. Be aware of that. Whether your plastic lid and make sure it's BPA free, so it's food safe. But some of them, if you lay them on their side, you're going to have a pool of blueberry juice in the fridge or whatever.
Of course, they're not always going to be
seal for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to want to know about.
Exactly. Okay. So the home fermenter is getting started. So getting appropriate equipment would be
and that's
important.
Very easy.
It's not complicated.
It really isn't. A variety of jars. Gallon ones are great for kraut.
Sure.
Doing large amounts of kraut. Here I have dill kraut, caraway kraut, and my killer kimchi. I always have these in the fridge.
Okay, is that
my last jar of kraut? I go buy cabbage. You can get cabbage year round because I love kraut, and it's so good.
Oh, very good. Now your killer kimchi, is that a recipe that you developed, or you
This is a vegan. I love kimchi. I always have.
It's a beautiful
kimchi
food.
classically has fermented fish sauce in it.
Right, right.
So this has sea palm, the seaweed that we get from the coast here. So it still has that oceany fermented flavor.
You're getting that umami.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got carrots, ginger, garlic, peppers, and then I make my own raw vegan hot sauce.
Okay.
A lot of kimchi recipes they'll either have you buy the Korean powder, hot powder to put in there, which will work. But a lot of them will say to go buy a Korean chili paste. Well, any of them that you buy at the store, number one, are dead because they're processed food. And I like my ferments to be alive, so I'm not going to touch one of those. But I was intrigued by those, and when I saw someone use that sauce, I liked the flavor, but I was aware that they were starting with a dead sauce, and I thought, well, I should come up with a living one.
Okay, that's
I have
wonderful.
a good friend from Bali, YN, back in Bend, Oregon, that would do these sambal alek, these hot sauces.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was really intrigued by those, so I looked up sambal aleks because I loved YN's hot sauces. And I just did a conversion. That's what I teach people, is how to convert anything. I'm talking any food from anywhere that is classically cooked to death into a more living version. So that I came up with a live version of a sambal alek. So I call this my Indonesian kimchi, by the way.
That's it. Oh, okay.
So Korean hot sauce. I have a hot sauce that's based in the flavors of the Indonesian.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So it's killer kimchi, AKA Indonesian kimchi.
Yeah, it's a fusion kimchi.
Okay.
Indonesian and Korean technique. The classic kimchi techniques all, of course, come out of the Korean area, Korean. Of course. But then I'm using an Indonesian hot sauce. I love fusion.
That's great. I'm sure. I'm just imagining the flavors, and I'm sure it's absolutely delicious.
It's so delicious when I'm first mixing it up in my big pottery hand-thrown bowl, which I threw myself, of course.
Naturally,
When I put that hot sauce in and I'm just mixing it all together and getting ready to go in my gallon jar, I actually take some out into a small glass bowl to just have as a salad that night for dinner, because it's so good already.
Oh, yeah.
Before it's even fermented. It doesn't have that tang that it's going to get yet as it develops.
But it's delicious.
But it's so good.
Yeah.
Just as a Asian salad.
Oh, of course. That's awesome. I'd like to see now I want to know what you do with the blueberries. That intrigues me. You have your fermented blueberries.
Very, very simple.
Could you, for our viewers and listeners, what do you do with those fermented blueberries?
What do I use them?
Yeah, what do you like to use them for?
Okay.
Because you're incorporating them in other recipes, right?
All kinds of different things. These aren't sweet. You can make them sweet.
And they're wild blueberries, right?
Some people ferment and put some sugar in there also. I'm not, though. These are lacto fermented. So they just have the salt brine, just like I was talking about.
Sure.
About 2%, 2.5% salt brine, and the blueberries, and that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
But in the case of blueberries, I put the fresh blueberries, I measure them into my quart jar.
Yeah.
Okay, this was more, but I've been using them up, so it's smaller now. And then I pour them into a bowl and get them ready. And I figure out my weight on the salt for the brine. But I don't put it in and dissolve it into the water like I would when I'm doing pickles. I put that salt right on the blueberries in the big bowl. Let it sweat on them for a little while.
I see.
And toss them for about an hour. Put a towel over them so no fruit flies are going to get in there.
Sure.
And start breaking them down and letting the juices start to come out as the salt works with the surface of the blueberries.
Yeah.
And then I put them into the jar and I put my filtered water, not tap water. You don't want to get any fluoride or chlorine in there for sure. Always filtered water when you're doing ferments.
Okay.
In there, and then just put my fermentation cap on and let it go.
Sure.
And I just kept trying this one. I actually let these go for about 12 days, which surprised me. I thought they would be done sooner than that. but I was just looking for this certain kind of taste. And the more you do it, the more you'll figure out what you like.
Yeah, it's a trial and error type of thing.
The sugars get more converted and it gets more pickled flavored and a little more sour the longer you go.
Sure.
But really good for your gut. And blueberries are one of the most powerful foods on the planet.
Oh, yeah,
yeah. The antioxidants and the cancer-fighting ability that they have. You know,
absolutely.
any purple food, purple cabbage, blueberries, all the purple foods have the widest array of vitamins and antioxidants. So
beautiful.
I love including blue and purple foods. These right here, I just took them out of the fridge, so they're all fogging up. But
are those beets?
See them. These were purple cabbage, or I mean cauliflower, and then Romanesque.
Oh my goodness!
Look on my Facebook. You'll see the pictures of what these looked like a week ago. They're so beautiful when they first go in the jar. Just gorgeous. Now that the water is all turning purple. But these are one of my favorite pickled vegetables, or fermented vegetables, I should say.
So that's the purple cauliflower and the green, the green Romanesque.
Romanesque, the ones that have swirl.
Sure, of course.
There's like a mathematical equation to look at. And it's just because those both happen to be at the farmer's market. I've never done the two of those together, but I came home and I was in fermenting mode and just pairing and matching different things. I try different things every time.
Well, they must have been beautiful when you had the combination of green and purple.
Oh yeah, and then I have a bunch of red Fresno chilies that a farmer has grown here also. So this is spicy.
Oh,
spicy and cruciferous.
Oh, you have the Fresno chilies in with the cauliflower.
Yeah. I love the flavor profile of anything in the cauliflower family.
Yes, beautiful.
When it pickles or when it ferments, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful combination on the top. I just go in with a slotted spoon and just put them on my salad, you know, and it's like you don't even need salad dressing. Yeah,
you sort of eliminated the need for dressing because you've got a bit of
kraut on there, some kimchi, whatever, some fermented tomatoes. I can just put those into a wonderful mixture of lettuce or herbs or whatever and eat it up without putting any salad dressing on there.
Sure.
People that are going SOS and taking the salt, oil, sugar out of their diet.
Right.
Any kind of excess, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even need the oil there.
Right.
James, if I put you on a desert island and you could only ferment one food, what would that be?
What are you going to have on a desert island? You're going to have some that flies over with an umbrella, or a parachute that drops off, I suppose.
Well, you have your choice of one food. I'll just say one combination of ferments in one jar. What would that be?
It would probably be kimchi.
Kimchi.
For me.
Your killer kimchi.
About kimchi and kraut, they're not sensitive. They have cabbage has such an incredible array of probiotics that develop. They go through 3 different stages in the development of a good kraut. That's done naturally, because there's unhealthy krauts in the store. By the way, don't go out and buy sauerkraut that's on the dry aisle in the store.
Yeah, speak to that about.
That means they've cooked it and put vinegar in it and all kinds of.
Right, because that's
ain't good for you.
You're referring to you don't want to buy something that's pasteurized.
Right.
You want to make sure
there are good, healthy krauts that you can buy in the refrigerator section.
Refrigerated section. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just make it yourself. It's so easy.
Right. If you
salt, cabbage, and love.
Right. Yes. lots of love stickers on the jar.
There's not even water added. All the water and the brine comes out of the cabbage itself.
Right.
So those are
beautiful.
The ingredients. The love is the energy you put into misogyny.
Of course.
Pack it in a jar.
Of course.
But it's so good for our gut. It's so easy, and it's just the staple. The one thing I am going to have in my fridge year round.
The cabbage or the kimchi.
So many different things. Kimchi is my favorite.
Your favorite, okay.
I love all the variations of.
We can also call it desert island kimchi.
Sure.
Now I
could actually dry the salt from the rocks and
Right.
the natural sea salt to make it. If I was
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm sure it'd be delicious.
so,
I know you have some other books there that you showed me earlier. Could you?
yeah, this one is really fantastic. Speaking of
Yeah.
kimchi and Asian foods, this is Preserving the Japanese Way. This book blew my mind. You can see, look at all these different bookmarks I have in here.
Oh yeah,
I
awesome,
tried so
awesome.
many different things in here. If you want to know how to make umi plums or anything from Asian food, this is an amazing book. And
Right.
it's as mind-blowing as Sandor Katz' work in the in-depth recipes and beautiful photos and information they have on the techniques in Asia. And I've always been intrigued by the Japanese diet and how they have always incorporated pickled and fermented foods in their mise en place of little dishes they put on the table while they're eating. They don't eat a big pile of spaghetti like we do in the West.
Yeah, it's a
Japanese home and they've got just a plethora of different things on the table and you're picking and putting them together. Well, this is a big part of that.
Beautiful. Yeah, and there's almost always in a Japanese meal, there's almost always a small bowl of fermented food, either miso soup or you know,
miso itself is a ferment.
Of course.
And
yeah.
is a ferment.
Yes,
Some
it's shoyu.
Out of their culture are fermented.
Right.
You know? And tofu. And
sure.
Tempeh.
All
these different things.
Exactly.
Tempeh is another really fun one to do, and not as hard as people would think. And they can do that one at home too.
All right.
So I've done, and any legume, any bean can be tempeh. People don't realize that. They say, well, I don't do tempeh because it's soy.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
Yeah, I'm sure anyone that's paid attention has noticed. Now there's black bean tempeh, there's chickpea tempeh.
They have the 3-grain tempeh is pretty.
I've made pinto bean tempeh. I've done combinations. One of my favorites was chickpea and black beans together.
Beautiful.
Really beautiful tempeh. So mix and match and play around. It's time consuming. It's a labor of love because you gotta sprout or steam them, loosen the skins up, and get the skins off the beans.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
The culture can't get through and do what it needs to do.
Right, right.
You infuse them with or inoculate them with.
Right.
Get those, at least 90% of all of them have to have the skin off.
Okay, so that could be a little challenging.
Light steaming, you don't want to kill them and cook them. You just loosen the skins, then you take them out in a towel, kitchen towel.
Sure,
and you're going to fold it over on them and sit and roll and take a bunch of skins out. But you just put on some great reggae music or whatever you love to dance to and just get lost in it, you know, and have some fun. But it's so cool once you get your own tempeh.
Oh, that must be cool. Fun. Yeah, and it must be delicious.
Oh my gosh. The mung bean was my favorite.
Mung bean, yeah, anything with mung.
Mung beans are. Imagine peeling those.
Are you using the whole mung beans or the split?
Whole mung beans.
Whole mung beans. Okay.
Ones you would sprout with.
Right. The green mung beans. Great.
And a dookie. Mung and a dookie, I've always had an appreciation for. My wife and I went through.
Well, they're so medicinal. They're so medicinal.
Yeah. In macrobiotics, they use a lot of mung and a dookie beans. And so
no doubt.
Years because for 2 years I was totally macrobiotic.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's because I've also studied macrobiotics and but I think if you have delved into macrobiotics, the appreciation and love of food that macrobiotics instills is really evident in what you're doing. So you actually are incorporating it.
Oh yeah, the cornerstone of everything I learned early on, even when I was vegetarian, after going strictly macrobiotic for 3 years, and it was after college, and we just detoxed our bodies from all those late night pizza parties and everything at college, and it was so incredible, and we felt so good. But it doesn't involve nightshade. It doesn't involve, bell peppers and tomatoes and some different things. I just had to get back to.
It can be very restrictive, and you want to expand.
Yeah. The things I walked away with in understanding balancing the energies of food and using food that is regional to your area.
Well,
and how the body no matter where if I move to Hawaii, I'm going to be eating very different things than I would eat here in the Northwest or in Mexico or in Bali or anywhere in the world, because our body is what you need in the climate you're in is provided within that climate.
Right. Well, you hit the nail on the head with macrobiotics, because
exactly, that's what I walked away
it's
from.
It's
and
local.
that's why I love my local farmers market and all these different things I'm doing.
Yeah, local, seasonal, and Whole Foods and
you know, local, seasonal, yes, but then do put some stuff up going into the winter months.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Available at the farmers market.
No, absolutely.
Whether you're using a dehydrator, and that could do a whole class on that, or we could talk about a dehydrator for a whole show.
Sure. Well,
amount of beautiful things you could do with that.
Yeah,
so
and
this one was also one of my foundational books, and it was for many people that got into fermenting, and that's Nourishing Traditions
by Sally Fallon.
Yeah. And you know, it isn't vegan. I do realize that, and it has a lot of the dairy kefirs and all that stuff. But back when I was a vegetarian, I loved. I just ate this book up and went through it, the entire thing, and it gave me a great foundation when I did moving into being an instructor, because I had tried all these things, and then I could easily convert them into plant food versions.
Yes, yes.
But the basics and the traditions. Right. Grandma and grandpa's traditions that have been going on for thousands of years. Yeah. You want to read about that? That's what this book has in it, and it's really great.
There's no doubt that book is a Bible, no doubt.
Absolutely. So, as is, if you're going to culinary school, anyone that goes through a good program knows about the Noma Guide to Fermentation.
Sure.
And this is the scientific go-to book. If you want to know exactly what ratio to use or not to use in a certain kind of ferment, this is the science. Real and good science to be safe.
And for our viewers and listeners, James, do you want to tell everyone what Noma is, or what that's all about?
The Noma Guide to Fermentation.
Noma is the restaurant, and the world famous restaurant in Scandinavia.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not up to speed enough to just spit it out, but
and that's Rene.
And between that and Sandor Katz, any question I have is answered.
Sure.
And Sandor Katz, The Art of Fermentation.
I actually looked at that book, the Noma book, before our talk today, our conversation, and I was actually amazed at how accessible it actually is.
Oh, it's very easy to follow.
You know, it's
photos.
And the other thing I really loved about it was the steps were very easy. It had a base recipe, and then it gave you like 10 variations and it referred you back to the base recipe.
Yep.
I mean, it can't get any easier than that.
This one's actually way easier and less heady than Sandor Katz.
James, I have to agree with you.
Like really nerding out and wanting to go on a historical dive.
I got lost in Sandor Katz's book.
Examples. This one, I love the history and everything.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And step-by-step instructions. Noma is incredible.
And so, from a restaurant that's doing culinary, their attention to
you gotta be safe.
The artistry of the culinary world, and particularly their big focus on fermentation and how they flavor their food with fermented foods. Yeah. And that really they put Nordic cuisine on the market. I mean, they put the term Nordic cuisine, they made it known to the world. I was surprised and delighted with the absolute simplicity of that book.
They did a great job.
So I would really, and what I also loved about it
belongs in any curriculum.
Exactly. No, I agree. The other thing I loved about that book was if you are a professional chef or interested in culinary arts, I love the variations on the theme. Yeah. And the ideas that they provided, like you can use it on this. Oh wow, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
What you're going to be using it in to eat, because people look at these pickled things and they're like, well, what do I do with it?
Right, exactly. So that's
because
really
there are great number of different ways. People just don't think outside the box. Think lasagnas. if you like making your own pasta,
Yeah,
put
yeah.
a pickled vegetable in with whatever other mix you're going to put
Sure.
into a lasagna or into a ravioli or a tortellini. Will knock it out of the park.
Oh,
In your
yeah.
mouth, it's like, oh, what is that?
Right. You get
It's
that
little zing of flavor in there.
the
that takes
surprise.
it to another gourmet level that you have not even comprehended.
It
Or
takes
when
it
you're
to
doing wraps. I
Sure.
love, if you're going to be doing simple, quick, and easy living foods,
Sure.
you have collard greens, you have rice paper, or whatever, and wraps become a big part of your life. Well, any pickled or fermented veggies thrown in there, it just knocks it out of the park.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you don't many times need a sauce, which is
No.
the most fattening part that people
Right.
whizzle into a wrap. So
Yeah.
these can be a great way to keep the fat down too, for people that don't want to, they want to do it a little bit more low fat. I don't worry about that much.
Right.
A lot of fat.
Yeah, but the healthy gut, but also, that's a good point. People who are thinking about fat, it's a way to get that burst of flavor without
Yeah.
the
And
added
the more you
fat.
play with them, the more you're going to find creative things to do with them.
Oh, sure, exactly. It's
So-
really
But just think outside the box. Is all
yeah,
I'm saying,
the sky's the
Even
limit.
in desserts, you'd be surprised how you compare sweet and pickled things together.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Putting pickled or fermented blueberries in with apples in a torte.
Oh no, that
It's a whole
sounds.
different experience. You have
Oh my
sweet and
God.
salty going on.
Yeah, the salt.
Absolutely different experience than
Well-
just putting blueberries in.
Well, plus the salt accentuates the sweet. It makes it
Oh,
more.
absolutely.
It makes it more concentrated.
Any good chef knows that any sweet dessert would fall flat without salt in it somehow.
Absolutely,
It makes up the flavors. It gives depth.
It's the
character to chocolate.
exactly.
Anything.
It's
you know?
it's the unsecret ingredient, but
And I know that some people are under salt restriction, and they
Right.
have to be aware of not using as much
okay.
for that. But for most people that are living a really healthy lifestyle, I do think that because I don't put salt on anything.
Sure.
People have it on their table and they're sprinkling it all over the food. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But the minimal amount that I use it in my cooking, and I use less than most chefs,
Sure.
is I think far healthier.
Yeah.
And the choice of the kind of salt you're going to use. I never use a table salt with all the anti-caking and iodized. And iodine we need in our diet, and I
Sure.
get that with seaweed. I use a lot of seaweed, so I don't worry about that, because you should
Right.
be aware of keeping iodine in your diet, but
Of
salt
course.
doesn't need to be the way you do it.
Is there a salt that you like to use, James?
Yeah, my favorite is, because it's a more macrobiotic principle, to try and
Sure.
get the closest salt you can. Can you guess what that would be?
You're using like a Celtic sea salt or
Nope.
or a mineral salt. Or a mineral salt.
Yeah, it's called real salt.
Real salt. Okay.
And that comes from Utah area,
Right.
where the Great
Yeah.
Basin was, where there used to be a huge ocean.
And
It's equivalent of Himalayan pink salt.
Sure, it's a mineral versus a sea salt.
Yeah,
Okay.
think about how far that pink Himalayan salt has traveled to get to your table.
Right, true. So
That's on it. And some of the practices they use to process it puts weird metal shavings in it, and they find traces of lead and different things in there that are not necessarily healthy. And the real salt out of Utah, I'm really sold on. I love it.
that's a nice salt. There's no doubt.
It's our salt from
Sure.
our region of the world. So I'm a huge proponent of it.
Do you
And
find
it has
that
the full mineral
you're getting the minerals? Yeah.
profile in it, that salt that has been washed and bleached and turned into this thing we call table salt doesn't have.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
If I'm going to use salt, I'm going to go for healthy salt.
Okay, cool. If you were to compare using a kosher salt, which is more of a table salt really, versus using real salt, do you find that you have to use a little bit more of the real salt, or?
There used to be times when I would use kosher salt. What is it? When I would do fermented lemons.
Okay.
I love
Like preserved lemons?
Yep. And I love making my own. They're very expensive to buy.
They are. It's like $9 for 3.
Yeah, and most of the techniques out there say start with kosher salt and you stack them and you slice the lemons and stack them and stuff. And I didn't have some kosher salt and couldn't get it. It was actually during this COVID.
Really?
Shelter in place, but I had the real salt, and I did
Okay.
it with the real salt instead, and I actually love how it turned out.
Oh, nice.
So, and that was the only thing I would use kosher salt for. So I don't think I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, that's cool. So I
like all the mineral. If you're going to be using it, you might as well use something that has the wide spectrum of minerals that
absolutely
salt can bring.
Yeah.
To the party. You might as well have it bring all the nutrition it can.
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
So these days, tell me about what you're up to professionally, what you're doing, fill in our viewers and listeners as to.
It's been tough for anyone that's in the culinary education market, I have to tell you.
Yes, no doubt.
Specialized schools that are more like vegan and raw food, different things like that. Because those schools are closed down, of course.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And there's so much intimate interaction in those kind of schools. It would be really hard to do it with the COVID going on.
No doubt.
So I haven't been doing any of that, but what I did is transform it in this day and age of our technology into coaching and schooling people right here from my own kitchen.
Okay.
And the ones that I've been taking on as the trial for this were in India. So
that's
I went
wonderful.
all the way halfway around the world.
And are you doing
people? And it has been spectacular. I love it.
That's great. Are you doing it via Zoom or?
I am. Actually, Zoom in certain parts of India doesn't come through as well for some reason. So some of them we've been doing FaceTime.
Okay.
For some reason it worked better.
Nice.
But having that one-on-one interaction and I did a mudslide pie with someone in India recently, and just took her through every step. And that's a real advanced raw vegan recipe to make.
Oh yeah, there's many steps there.
A good hour, probably even longer, because the ganache sets in the fridge while you make this part, and it's all a layering. She was blown away. It was for her husband's birthday.
Oh my goodness, wow.
Absolutely loved it. And it was so much fun. And it was like being in the classroom with someone where they really could say, wait, while you're blending in the Cuisinart with the crust or whatever it is, and ask a question, you stop, and then they say, okay, now we're going to do it together. Hit start, now shake, now stop.
So was she making the pie while you were making the pie?
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Ahead of time, and this is what I do with these live classes.
That's great. That's great.
And it's tricky. I have a number of great students. You know Shruti?
Yes, I do.
She's been great.
And she's she's selling food now, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Shruti in India.
Right. And she can troubleshoot for me. So when I got this idea to do these with these other students that were wanting this, India is very intrigued with raw foods right now because of the Sattvic movement over there.
Oh yeah, the Sattvic movement, yeah.
And it's not really raw, but it is mostly about 80% raw.
I see.
Getting a lot of requests from students like that, and I love working with people from India. It's always really fun. And they have spices they bring.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful.
Questions and their understanding of the layering of spices.
Well, it's such a
symbiotic dance together. We transform my own recipes sometimes.
Oh, I know. It's such a beautiful cuisine.
So I love working with people from India.
Yeah, and the word Sattvic is an Ayurvedic term, actually.
Right, but Shruti was able to take my shopping lists of all the main ingredients I know I use a lot, and then my equipment lists.
Yeah.
And troubleshoot them for me and send me back something that says, well, here's what people in India are going to be able to get. There's tools I have here that they just can't.
I love that you can reach out to one of your former students. And bring it into the Indian culture, something that makes sense in India.
Yeah, and I have that all over the world.
That's great.
I teach at the Living Light for 7 years as a lead instructor. I have had students from almost every country or continent except Antarctica.
Yeah.
People that I can turn to, that have graduated from our program all over the world.
Right, I know, that's beautiful.
And I can always tap into these people and say, hey, I'm going to be teaching some courses in your area. What's available? And send them a shopping list and say, is this fruit available or this herb or whatever it is. Sure. And then I can do ahead of time the work to make sure that we're not stumbling through that in the class. That they have what they need. I know what I should stay away from.
No, I think that is
they're not going to be able to get it, and you might as well not frustrate them.
Yeah, it's kind of like filtering.
Yeah.
So you're doing the
I would have been far more intimidated about that, 7 years ago. But after teaching it to people from around the world for that many years, I've heard every question in the world about conversion or what can I use instead of that, because we can't get that back at home.
Right. Well, you have the
institution list.
You have the experience and the knowledge that you didn't start out with, but a lot of years of committed dedication.
Sometimes
and
it's just about finding something that's the same texture and the same flavor profile.
Right.
It's not necessarily the same thing, but something that will just substitute and come into that recipe.
Well,
and sometimes it makes it even better than what you were using.
Well, that's what I mean. I think the beautiful thing about teaching is, just with what you described, you're learning from, the teacher is learning from students and profiting from this exchange of information.
Always.
And it's opening up new channels for you as well.
Always.
So that's awesome.
When, in this shelter in place, I thought, okay, I'm just going to take my years of knowledge in this and create an online school. And I thought people would just go on, watch the videos and do it, and then go and move to the next module in the very similar way that I've seen online in other programs.
Sure.
Then it hit me that I'm missing out on exactly what you were just talking about. I feed off that symbiotic dance of working with a student and learning from them as much as they're going to learn from me.
It's kind of like
get that in a static website that
it's like the ferments. It's like the fermented foods.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is, because I think online education, not all of it, but much of it, without the interaction and the exchange of energy,
right,
and ideas.
I think the future of it is live, and I think that's one of the gifts, because in every bad thing, there's an opposite side. It's all yin yang dance.
Right. We like to look at the opportunity.
What we have is that, yes, because of this shelter in place, the understanding that online learning doesn't have to be static is exploding right now.
Yes.
Exploding.
Right.
And the amount of platforms and or templates for websites and different things that are coming out in LearnDash and these different things where you can do interactive live.
Yeah.
And when mine fully opens up into what I'm envisioning it to be, it won't be all live. I can't do that every day. I would have so much food coming out of my ears every day. We'd be feeding people or something. I don't know what I would
we have a lot more jars there.
Yeah. But twice a week,
sure,
they're going to have they'll have a shop ahead list that they know they're going to have to get by Wednesday.
Sure.
We're going to tap in from all over the world, and we're making that living lasagna on Wednesday. So come prepared and make the dish together. And if they don't have the ingredients, they can just watch along and ask questions still.
Oh, sure. It's still interactive.
Do it interactive.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I can see each one of their dishes if they hold their phone up or whatever to it, and I can say, well, no, you want to layer it this way, you want to do that.
Right. That's so
all
cool.
Very it's
That's
wonderful.
Great. Well, it's wonderful that you have discovered a way to continue the work. There's no doubt.
And the few people that I've done it with are like in tears at the end about how much fun it was. I do. I'm just back, but they're just like, oh my God, I love this.
Well, I'm just envisioning that mud pie. That must have been awesome.
And I have a whole huge mudslide pie freezer.
Great.
I do not have a sweet tooth. I don't have a lot of sugar in my diet.
Well, from what I
eat the best in raw vegan desserts and all that, but I'm saving it for some big party post.
I know. I was gonna say I know you're gonna take that somewhere.
We'll see.
One thing I want to ask is, you also indicated that you've been working on a curriculum that you're designing for a program overseas, and I know that it's confidential. But is there anything you want to add on that? It's a vegan fusion.
It's really fun, and I'm glad that I had that opportunity come about last spring and dove into it, because it gave me the chance to go back for 7 years and really go back. And I have always saved everything. So I have, 7 years worth of recipes and trial and error and books and everything that I've written, my own notebooks from the kitchen. and just start solidifying, testing a little bit more, getting them into my own curriculum.
Yes.
That I was going to be taking to this program over in Asia, a new school that's being built, but then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And nobody wants people from the U.S. traveling
They don't,
do business. So the work
they're
permit is not going to happen on that yet. But it dove me
right.
forward into that introspection of my own work.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I just looked at it and said, wow, look at the amount of recipes in everything I can imagine that I do have. And
Well,
so
I think
that has grown the outline for the books that I want, a few different books looking at those different recipes, which I've always wanted the time to develop. And that's coming along in tandem with then starting to online teach these students and also working on that curriculum for that project on the side, but in the back of my mind saying, but you know, maybe I won't ever leave. Who knows how long COVID's going to last? It opens up my own online school that I can develop.
Sure. Well, I think you really,
fun.
Yeah, I love what you said about, you know, this pause that we've all been given. It enabled you to have the opportunity to look at your body of work and what you've actually cultivated, and it's really amazing. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think that for anyone who's passionate about anything and trapped at home right now,
yeah,
you have more time on your hands to dive in.
No doubt.
Why waste this time?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
When we have our working life and then we have on the side little dreams that, well, maybe I'll create a blog or maybe I'll do it. Well, do it.
Sure. That's how this podcast that's how this podcast came about. So
yeah, exactly. And
anyway,
we're all doing that. And
exactly.
the people that are looking at the half full glass, you know, versus the half empty are taking opportunity and turning it into a new way of being.
Of course. Yeah.
They can change you from the inside out. You go in and study what you are passionate about and figure out your gift to this lifetime and what you want to give.
Your unique talent.
You wake up with a kick in your step every morning like I do. To just get out there and do it. You know, and if COVID is going to bring that about for people, then it's a gift as much as it is a tragedy. And that's not to downplay any of the people who have died and everything. That is definitely
of course
could have been avoided in my mind. But you know, that beside all of that and how dark that can be, and looking at that, there is a bright side. You know?
Yeah.
And we also need to remember that as well.
I think that is a very important point, James, that there's a time for reflection and for creativity and reinventing. So, and just let our listeners and viewers know where they can find you on social media. And I'll include all this in the show notes as well. But
right now, people love my photo tutorials on Facebook.
Yes, those are wonderful.
Plant Food Chef. It's all one word.
You have a Facebook page, Raw Food Chef?
No, Plant Food Chef.
Plant Food Chef, sorry.
One word. Yeah. And Instagram, same, Plant Food Chef.
Okay, Plant Food Chef.
But the actual photos with the step-by-step tutorials are on the Plant Food Chef Facebook page.
On the Facebook page, okay.
If you just go down and scroll down through all the posts, you're going to see a lot of different things on there. And if you're tapped into there and my Instagram, you're going to know when the blog gets loaded up and the launch of my online teaching.
And that's going to be under plantfoodchef.com.
Plantfoodchef@gmail.com.
Okay.
And or through either of those that I've already mentioned on social media, and inquire about doing personal coaching with me. I'm open. I can only take so many at a time.
Right.
I'm always open to looking for the ones that are a really good match. I love working with people that are healing themselves.
Well, I have this feeling you may get several requests for that mud pie after this video and audio.
Yeah.
So anyway,
desserts are fun. Everyone loves desserts, and they really are fun. And desserts are one of the most important, I feel, to do a live Skype or Zoom with someone, because the techniques are so there's not a lot of fudging around.
Yeah. I mean,
that cheesecake to stand up the way it needs to be. You
sure.
really, reading it in a book is one thing, but seeing and doing it together it takes it to a whole other level.
Now, do you feel that applies to raw as much as cooked desserts? Because cooked desserts tend to be more precise, but do you feel that with raw that is the case as well?
Well, having grown up with a father who was a baker, I am very well aware of the fact that weighing it out and being super precise is
right.
key to good baking and then good desserts. It really
right. So that you bring that in.
As far as what you're going to put in the pie and stuff that you can play around a lot with, but that technique for the crust and different things like that, ratios count, and being precise does count.
Yeah.
In raw desserts, though, even more.
Of course. Oh, okay.
In teaching advanced raw vegan desserts for years,
yeah,
it really does have to be spot on. If your coconut meat is a little bit too wet and off in a certain way, it's not going to set up the right way. Or, there's just so many different and little tiny additions, like some psyllium that you're going to put in. And if you put too much, it's just so gelled and weird that you can't eat it. So the finesse is really tight in raw vegan desserts, but they're spectacular if they're done.
They're fantastic desserts.
And they're one of the most healthy, divine things you'll ever eat.
Right. I mean,
we're not using processed sugars. At least I'm not. We're using natural dried fruits and date paste and different things that are far more healthy than any of the commercial standard American diet desserts.
Than refined sugar, no doubt. Yeah. So, well, James, I think we've come to the end of our conversation, and I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time. This was awesome. I've learned a lot. And what?
I said I live for this.
I really loved our time together today, and I'm sure that our viewers and listeners are truly going to appreciate your offering today. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing what you're doing too. It's great to see people that have been in and around Living Light out there changing the world still. So.
Baby steps. So hold for a moment while I stop the recording. Thanks, James.